You should not be here. The words cut through the silence of the vault like a blade, cold and absolute. Isla's fingers froze on the ornate frame of the mirror she had been carefully wrapping in velvet cloth. She did not turn around. She did not need to. The voice of Alpha King Darius was as familiar to her as her own heartbeat, though he had never before spoken to her directly in all the years she had served in the palace vaults. I said, "You should not be here." His footsteps echoed on the Itzhai. Stone floor, measured and deliberate, the sound of a predator approaching prey that had nowhere to run. Isla's throat tightened. The mirror in her hand seemed to pulse with warmth, as if it could sense the danger, as if it were trying to warn her of what was coming. She had been so careful. Years of careful planning, of making herself invisible, of becoming so unremarkable that no one would ever think to question what the little Omega without a wolf did in the forgotten depths of the palace. And now, in a single moment, everything was unraveling. "I have permission to be in the vaults, Your Majesty," Isla said, her voice steadier than she felt. She turned slowly, keeping the mirror behind her back, her body positioned to shield it from view. "I am the keeper of antiquities. This is where I belong." Darius stood in the doorway of the vault, backlit by torchlight from the corridor beyond. He was massive, as all Alpha Kings were, his shoulders broad enough to fill the frame, his presence so overwhelming that the very air seemed to bend around him. His eyes, a startling shade of amber that glowed even in the dim light, fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He had never looked at her before. Not really. In the 5 years since she had come to the palace, he had passed her in corridors, had been in the same rooms during ceremonies, had probably signed the documents that authorized her meager salary. But he had never seen her. No one ever saw her. That was the point. That was how she survived. "The keeper of antiquities," Darius repeated, his tone suggesting he was tasting the words and finding them wanting. "Is that what you call yourself?" He stepped into the vault, and the door swung shut behind him with a sound like a death knell. The space suddenly felt impossibly small. The rows of shelves filled with ancient relics and forgotten treasures, the cabinets holding scrolls and weapons from wars long ended, the tables covered in artifacts, waiting to be catalogued. All of it seemed to shrink until there was nothing in the world but him and her, and the secret she was trying so desperately to hide. "I call myself what I am, Your Majesty," Isla said. Her fingers tightened on the velvet cloth, feeling the hard surface of the mirror beneath. It was warm now, almost hot, as if it were alive and responding to the tension in the room. "I maintain the royal collection. I preserve the history of the realm. I ensure that nothing of value is lost or damaged." "Nothing of value." Darius moved closer, his eyes never leaving her face. There was something predatory in the way he moved, something that made every instinct in her body scream at her to run, to shift and flee. But she could not shift. She had never been able to shift. The wolf that should have awakened in her at puberty had never come, leaving her trapped in this fragile human form, weak and vulnerable in a world ruled by those who could transform into creatures of deadly power and grace. "Tell me, Keeper, what do you consider valuable in this collection? The rusted swords of dead kings? The crowns of queens whose names have been forgotten? Or perhaps something else? Something you keep hidden even from those who employ you?" Isla's heart hammered against her ribs. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, he knew about the mirror. But how? She had been so careful. The mirror had been buried in a forgotten corner of the vaults when she found it 3 years ago, wrapped in cloth so old it had crumbled to dust at her touch. The inventory records made no mention of it. There were no descriptions in any of the catalogs. It was as if someone had deliberately erased all evidence of its existence. And when she had unwrapped it and looked into its surface for the first time, she understood why. The mirror of truth did not show reflections. It showed reality. And reality, Isla had learned, was something most people would kill to keep hidden. "I hide nothing, Your Majesty," Isla said. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they sounded hollow. Darius smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "You are lying to your king. That is treason." He was close enough now that she could smell him, a scent of pine and smoke and something wild and untamed that made her head spin. "I could have you executed for that alone, but I am feeling generous today, so I will give you one chance to tell me the truth. What is that you are hiding behind your back?" The vault seemed to hold its breath. Isla could hear her own pulse pounding in her ears, could feel the sweat gathering at the base of her spine despite the coolness of the underground chamber. She had two choices. She could lie, and he would know, and whatever came next would be swift and brutal. Or she could tell him the truth, hand over the mirror, and watch as the one thing that had given her hope for the past 3 years was taken from her forever. Neither option offered salvation. Neither option offered escape. So she chose the third path, the one she had been preparing for since the day she realized what the mirror truly was and what it meant for her future. "It is a mirror, Your Majesty," Isla said quietly. "An old one. Probably worthless. I was going to add it to the inventory and store it with the other decorative pieces." She started to move, to step around him, and make her way toward the door, as if this were nothing more than an awkward encounter between a king and a servant he barely knew existed. But Darius moved faster. His hand shot out and gripped her wrist, not painfully, but with enough force to stop her completely. The contact sent a shock through her system, a jolt of something electric and terrifying and utterly foreign. His eyes widened slightly, and she knew he had felt it too. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them crackled with energy that made the hair on her arms stand up, that made her wolf, the wolf she did not have, could not possibly have, stir somewhere deep in her chest like something waking from a very long sleep. "Show me," Darius said, his voice rougher than before. It was not a request. Isla swallowed hard. Her wrist burned where his fingers touched her skin, as if his very presence were setting her on fire from the inside out. Slowly, with a sense of inevitability that felt like drowning, she brought her other hand around and held out the velvet-wrapped bundle. Darius released her wrist and took the bundle from her. His fingers brushed hers, and that same electric shock passed between them again, stronger this time, almost violent in its intensity. He unwrapped the velvet carefully, methodically, until the mirror lay exposed in his hands. It was not particularly large, perhaps the size of a dinner plate, with a frame of tarnished silver worked into intricate patterns of wolves and moons and stars. The glass itself was dark, almost black, its surface perfectly smooth and unmarred despite what must have been centuries of existence. Darius stared at the mirror for a long moment. Then he looked up at Isla, and there was something in his eyes she had never seen before. Not anger, not suspicion. Something worse. Recognition. "Where did you find this?" he asked, and his voice was barely above a whisper. "In the third vault," Isla said. There was no point in lying now. Behind a false wall. There were no records of it. No mention in any inventory. It was hidden deliberately. "And you did not think to report this discovery to the crown?" "I did not know what it was at first," Isla said. That, at least, was true. "I thought it was just another old mirror. There are dozens of them in the collection." Darius turned the mirror over in his hands, examining the frame, the patterns worked into the silver. "But then you looked into it," he said. It was not a question. "And you saw something. Something that made you decide to keep it secret. Something that made you betray your duty to your king." Isla said nothing. What could she say? "Yes. I looked into the mirror and I saw the truth of what I am, of what you are, of what this entire kingdom is built upon. Yes, I saw that I am not the worthless Omega everyone believes me to be, but the last living heir of the royal line your father slaughtered to take the throne. Yes, I saw that you and I are mates, bound by destiny and magic, and a connection so powerful that it could either save this kingdom or destroy it completely. Any of those truths would get her killed. So she remained silent and waited for whatever came next. Darius held the mirror up, angling it to catch the light from the torches. The surface remained dark and impenetrable. "The mirror of truth," he said softly, as if speaking to himself. "I thought it was a legend, a story used to frighten children and keep lords honest. But here it is, real, solid, in my hands." He looked at Isla, and there was something almost like wonder in his expression. "Do you know what this mirror does, little Omega? Do you understand what you have been hiding?" "It shows truth," Isla said. Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Not appearances, not illusions. It shows what is real." "It shows what is real," Darius repeated. He turned the mirror in his hands again, and Isla saw his reflection appear on its surface for just a moment, before the glass went dark again. "And what truth did it show you, Isla of the Vaults? What reality did you see that was worth risking? Your life to keep secret?" He knew her name. In 5 years he had never spoken her name, and now it fell from his lips like something familiar, like something he had always known. The intimacy of it made her chest tighten. "It showed me that I am not what everyone believes," Isla said carefully. "It showed me that there is more to this world than what we are allowed to see. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories. Like this one." Darius's eyes narrowed. Cryptic words from a woman who deals in ancient things. "But I did not come here for riddles, Keeper. I came here because I have been betrayed. Someone in my court is working against me, feeding information to my enemies, undermining my authority. Someone close enough to know my movements, my plans, my weaknesses. And I have been told that there is an artifact in these vaults that can reveal the traitor. An artifact that shows truth. An artifact that a certain little Omega has been hiding for years." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Someone had told him about the mirror. Someone knew she had it. Someone wanted Darius to find it, to look into it, to see whatever truths it would reveal. But who? And why now, after all this time? "I cannot help you, Your Majesty," Isla said. "The mirror does not work the way you think it does. It does not answer questions. It does not reveal specific truths on command. It simply shows what is real when someone looks into it. And what is real for one person may be different from what is real for another." Darius studied her face, searching for something she could not name. "Then you have looked into it. Multiple times, I would guess, given how carefully you have been hiding it. And it showed you truths you did not want others to see." He stepped closer, so close that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I wonder, Keeper, what truths are you so desperate to hide? What reality do you see that terrifies you so much?" Isla's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse beating in his throat, could sense the barely controlled power that thrummed through him like a living thing. And beneath it all, she could feel that connection, that impossible pull that the mirror had shown her was real. The mate bond. The thing that tied her to him despite everything his family had done to hers, despite the fact that he had never noticed her existence, despite the reality that he was her enemy in every way that mattered. "The truth is not something you give to others, Your Majesty," Isla said quietly. "It is something you must be willing to see for yourself. And sometimes, the truth is more terrible than any lie." Darius's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he would press her further, would demand answers she could not give. But instead, he held up the mirror, positioning it so he could see his own. Reflection. "Then let us see what truth this mirror has for me," he said. And before Isla could stop him, before she could warn him or prepare him or do anything at all, he looked into the glass. The change was immediate and catastrophic. Darius went absolutely still, every muscle in his body locking into place as if he had been turned to stone. His eyes, fixed on the mirror's surface, went wide with shock, then horror, then something that looked like grief so profound it was painful to witness. The mirror itself began to glow, a soft silver light that grew brighter and brighter until Isla had to shield her eyes. The temperature in the vault plummeted, her breath misting in the suddenly frigid air. And through it all, Darius stood frozen, staring at whatever truth the mirror was showing him, unable to look away, unable to move, unable to do anything but witness. Isla did not know what he was seeing. The mirror showed different truths to different people, revealed different realities, based on what the viewer most needed to know or most feared to discover. But she could guess. She could imagine. And when Darius finally lowered the mirror, when the light faded and the temperature began to return to normal, when he turned to look at her with eyes that held a devastation so complete it made her heart ache, she knew that he had seen at least some of what she had seen. He had seen the truth of what she was, and he had seen the truth of what they were to each other. "No," Darius said, his voice hoarse and broken. "No, this is not possible." He looked at the mirror again, then at Isla, then back at the mirror, as if hoping the reflection would change, as if hoping what he had seen was some kind of trick or illusion. "You are an Omega. You have no wolf. You have no power. You are nothing." The words should have hurt. They had hurt every day for the past 5 years. Every time someone looked through her as if she were invisible. Every time someone dismissed her as worthless. But now, hearing them from him, knowing what he had just seen, they felt different. They felt like denial. They felt like fear. "I am exactly what the mirror showed you," Isla said. Her voice was steady now, stronger than it had been. "I am the truth you did not want to see. The reality you have been avoiding. The destiny you cannot escape no matter how much you wish otherwise." Darius's hand tightened on the mirror's frame. "My father killed the entire Silver Moon royal line. Every last one of them. I was there. I was 15 years old, and I watched him do it. I saw their bodies. I saw the blood. There were no survivors. There could not be survivors. Your father killed everyone he found," Isla corrected gently. "But my mother was not there that night. She had been sent away months before, hidden in a small village on the border, pregnant with the child who would be the last hope of the Silver Moon line. She died giving birth to me, and the woman who took me in raised me as her own, told everyone I was her daughter, made sure I never showed any sign of power or position or anything that might draw attention. She taught me to be invisible, to be nothing, because being nothing was the only way to survive in a world where the Nightshade Crown wanted every trace of Silver Moon blood erased from existence. The silence that followed was absolute. Isla could hear the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distant tunnels, could hear the faint echo of footsteps from floors above, could hear her own heart beating a rhythm that sounded like a war drum. Darius stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. And in a way, he was. The invisible Omega, the servant girl who had spent years cataloging the relics of his conquered kingdom, was standing before him revealed as the very thing his entire reign was built upon destroying. The irony was almost beautiful in its cruelty. "If what you say is true," Darius said slowly, each word carefully chosen, "then you are the rightful heir to the throne I sit upon. You are the living embodiment of my father's greatest failure. And you have been here, in my palace, in my vaults, handling the treasures of my kingdom, for 5 years." He laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. "You could have killed me 1,000 times, poisoned my food, sabotaged my weapons, stolen secrets and sold them to my enemies, Why did you not? Because I am not my revenge, Isla said. I am not the sum of what was done to my family. And because the mirror showed me something else. Something that complicated everything. She took a breath, steadying herself for what came next. It showed me you. Darius went very still. What did you say? The mirror showed me that you are my mate, Isla said. And saying the words aloud felt like cutting open her own chest and exposing her heart. It showed me that despite everything your father did, despite the throne you sit upon built on the bones of my family, despite every reason I have to hate you, you and I are bound together. Our wolves recognize each other. Our souls call to each other. The bond between us is as real as the blood on your family's hands. I do not have a mate. Darius's voice was flat, emotionless, as if he were reciting a fact he had accepted long ago. The curse that killed my mother took that possibility from me. Every oracle, every priestess, every seer who has ever examined me has said the same thing. I will never have a mate. I will never have a true bond. I will never complete the transformation that would make me whole. He held up the mirror, and in the torchlight, Isla could see his reflection on its surface, and overlaying that reflection, translucent and ghostly, the image of a massive black wolf with eyes of burning amber. The mirror showed me this. My wolf, the beast I have only ever been able to partially shift into, the power I have never been able to fully access, because without a mate to complete me, I am forever trapped. Between forms, incomplete, broken. And it showed you me, Isla said softly. It showed you that I am the one who can complete you, the one who can break the curse, the one who can make you whole. She laughed, and it was a bitter sound. Do you understand how impossible this is? How cruel. The gods themselves must be laughing. The daughter of the line you destroyed is the only one who can save you. The woman you have ignored for 5 years is the one you have been searching for your entire life. And the mate bond that should bring us together is built on a foundation of blood and betrayal and grief so deep it can never be forgiven. Darius lowered the mirror slowly. When he looked at her again, his eyes held something Isla had never expected to see. Not anger, not denial, but a kind of terrible, painful hope. Can you feel it? He asked. The bond. Can you feel it pulling at you the way I feel it pulling at me? Or is this just another cruel trick, another lie the mirror is telling? To destroy what little remains of my sanity? Isla closed her eyes. She could feel it. Of course she could feel it. It had been there since the first moment she looked into the mirror 3 years ago and saw his face overlaying her reflection, saw the silver thread connecting their souls, saw the truth of what they were to each other. Every time he had passed her in the corridors, every time he had been in the same room, every time she had heard his voice or caught his scent, the bond had pulled at her like a physical force, demanding she acknowledge it, demanding she act on it. And every time, she had buried it deeper, had forced herself to remember what his family had done, had reminded herself that destiny was not the same as choice, and fate was not the same as forgiveness. I feel it, Isla whispered. I have felt it for 3 years, and I hate it. I hate that my soul recognizes you. I hate that my wolf, wherever she is sleeping inside me, knows you are mine. I hate that despite everything, despite all the very good reasons I should despise you, some part of me wants nothing more than to accept this bond and let it consume me. She opened her eyes and looked at him directly, letting him see the truth of her conflict, the war that raged inside her between duty and destiny, between hatred and hope. But feeling it and accepting it are 2 different things, Your Majesty. The mirror shows truth, but it does not dictate choice, and I choose to reject this bond. I choose to walk away. I choose to remain what I have always been. Nothing. The pain that flashed across Darius's face was so raw, so visceral, that Isla felt it like a physical blow. The bond between them transmitted emotions in both directions, and she could feel his anguish as if it were her own, could feel the way her rejection cut him deeper than any blade. But she forced herself to stand firm, to not reach out to him the way every instinct screamed at her to do. This was the only power she had. The power to refuse. The power to say no to destiny itself. "You cannot mean that," Darius said. "You cannot feel what I feel and still choose to walk away. The bond is too strong. The pull is too powerful. Isla, please." The sound of her name again, this time spoken like a prayer, like a plea, undid something inside her. But she held her ground. "You want me to save you," Isla said. "You want me to complete you, to break your curse, to make you whole. But you are asking me to save the man whose father murdered my entire family. You are asking me to bond myself for eternity to the bloodline that destroyed mine. You are asking me to forgive the unforgivable." She shook her head. "I cannot do that. I will not do that. Find another way to break your curse, Your Majesty. Find another mate. Find another destiny. Because I want no part of yours." She turned to walk away, to leave him standing there with the mirror and the truth and the weight of everything they could have been. But she had taken only 3 steps when Darius spoke again, and his words stopped her as surely as if he had grabbed her physically. "I cannot find another mate because there is no other mate. The bond is formed. Our wolves know each other. And you can reject it. You can deny it. You can run from it for the rest of your life. But it will never change. You will never be free of me. And I will never be free of you." Isla turned back to face him. "Then we will both live with that pain. It is no more than what we deserve. You for the throne you sit upon, and me for the vengeance I am choosing not to take." Darius's expression hardened. The vulnerability, the hope, the raw emotion that had been there moments before vanished, replaced by the cold mask of the Alpha King. "You speak of choice, Keeper. But I wonder if you truly understand what you are choosing. You think you can return to your vaults, to your artifacts, to your invisible existence. You think I will allow you to simply walk away now that I know what you are?" He moved toward her with predatory grace, and Isla found herself backing up until she hit the wall of shelves behind her. He braced one hand on either side of her head, caging her in, and the intensity of his proximity made her head swim. "You are the heir to the Silver Moon throne," Darius said, his voice low and dangerous. "You are a threat to my reign, to my authority, to everything I have built. By every law of this kingdom, I should execute you right now. I should take that pretty throat between my hands and squeeze until there is no more breath in your body, until the last trace of your family's line is finally, completely erased." He leaned closer, his breath ghosting across her skin. "But I cannot. Do you know why, Isla of the Silver Moon line? Because the bond will not let me. My wolf would tear me apart from the inside if I harmed you. My soul would shatter if I caused you pain. The very thing that makes you my greatest enemy also makes you the one person in this entire world I am utterly incapable of hurting." Isla's pulse raced. She could feel the heat of him, could smell the wild scent that made her dizzy, could sense the barely restrained power that radiated from every line of his body. And beneath it all, she could feel the bond humming between them, growing stronger with every second they were this close, wrapping around them like chains made of starlight and inevitability. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Darius's eyes searched hers, and in them she saw a complexity of emotion that took her breath away. Anger and desire and fear and hope and desperation all tangled together into something that defied simple categorization. "I want you to stop running from what we are," Darius said. "I want you to acknowledge this bond. I want you to give us a chance to find out if destiny is wiser than our hatred." He raised one hand and traced the line of her jaw with his fingertips, the touch feather-light and electrifying. I want you to consider the possibility that perhaps the gods put us together not despite our history but because of it. That perhaps you are meant to heal what my father broke. That perhaps I am meant to give back what was taken from you. That perhaps together we could build something better than what came before. And if I refuse? Isla asked, though her voice trembled with the effort it took to maintain her defiance. If I continue to reject you, what then? Darius smiled. And it was a dangerous expression. Then I will court you. I will pursue you. I will spend every day proving to you that I am worth the risk. I will give you no peace, no rest, no escape from the reality of what we are to each other. He leaned in until his lips were a breath away from her ear. Because you may have chosen to reject the bond, little Omega, but I am choosing to accept it. And I have never in my life failed to claim what is mine. The words should have angered her. The possessiveness, the arrogance, the assumption that he had any right to make such declarations. But instead, they sent heat flooding through her system, awakened something fierce and primal in the depths of her chest where her wolf slept. For the first time in her life, Isla felt something shift inside her, felt something respond to the challenge in his words, felt the stirring of power she had been told she would never possess. Her wolf, finally, impossibly, beginning to wake. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The sensation was so shocking, so overwhelming, that Isla gasped and pushed against Darius's chest, needing space, needing air, needing distance from the source of this impossible awakening. He stepped back immediately, but his eyes tracked the changes in her with predatory focus. You felt that, he said, and it was not a question. Your wolf. She is waking up. Isla pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the rapid beat of her heart, feeling something else beneath it, something wild and powerful and utterly foreign. That is not possible. I am 23 years old. If I was going to shift, it would have happened years ago. You are not just any Omega, Darius said. He still held the mirror in one hand, and now he held it up so she could see her reflection. But it was not her reflection that appeared on the surface. It was something else. Someone else. A woman who looked like her but stronger, more confident, with eyes that glowed silver and a presence that radiated power. And behind that woman, translucent and ghostly like Darius's wolf had been, was a magnificent white wolf with a coat that seemed to shimmer with moonlight and eyes that held ancient wisdom. You are Silver Moon royalty. Your bloodline is one of the oldest and most powerful in existence. The only reason your wolf did not emerge before is because she was protecting you. If you had shown any sign of power, any hint of your true nature, you would have been discovered and killed. So she stayed dormant, waiting, hiding, keeping you safe until the moment you were strong enough and hidden enough to survive the revelation of what you truly are. Isla stared at the image in the mirror, at the wolf that was apparently hers, at the woman she could become. I do not want this, she said, but the words lacked conviction, because some part of her, some deep and hungry part that had lived in shadow her entire life, absolutely did want this. Wanted the power, wanted the recognition, wanted to be seen. I think you do, Darius said softly. I think you have wanted it for a very long time, and I think the only thing stopping you from accepting it is fear. Fear of what it means, fear of what you might become, fear of the responsibility and the danger and the impossible choice between vengeance and forgiveness. He was right. Of course he was right. Isla had spent so long being nothing, being invisible, being safe in her insignificance, that the thought of stepping into power, into visibility, into importance was terrifying. And even more terrifying was the fact that accepting her wolf, accepting her heritage, accepting her power, would inevitably pull her closer to Darius, would strengthen the bond between them, would make it even harder to maintain the distance she desperately needed. "I need time," Isla said. "I need to think. I need to understand what is happening to me before I make any decisions about us." Darius studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You will have time, but not complete freedom. You are too valuable now, too dangerous. If my enemies discover what you are, before I can protect you properly, they will use you against me, or they will kill you to prevent me from completing my transformation. Either way, you will not be safe in these vaults anymore." He stepped back, giving her space, but his eyes never left her face. "You will move into the royal wing tonight. You will be given chambers appropriate to your station, and you will accept the protection of my personal guard whether you want it or not." "You are imprisoning me," Isla said. "You are making me your captive." "I am keeping you alive," Darius corrected. "There is a difference, and if you truly want time to think, to process, to decide what you want to do about the bond and your heritage and your power, then you will need to be somewhere you cannot be easily killed by those who would prefer you remain a secret." He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Isla took it. The contact sent that now familiar shock of electricity through her system, and she saw Darius's eyes flash amber as he felt it too. "Come," he said. "Let me show you the world you were born to inherit. Let me show you what it means to be Silvermoon royalty. And then, when you have seen everything, when you understand the full scope of what you are and what we could be together, you can make your choice. Accept the bond or reject it. Take your place as heir or remain hidden, but make that choice from a position of knowledge and power, not from a place of fear and ignorance." Isla let him lead her from the vaults, through corridors she had walked 1,000 times as a servant, but which looked different now, more significant, as if the palace itself recognized the change in her status. They passed guards who snapped to attention at the sight of the Alpha King, past servants who kept their eyes down in their awe. Movements careful, past courtiers who whispered behind their hands at the sight of the king walking with an unknown woman. And through it all, Isla felt her wolf stirring, felt the power building inside her like a storm gathering strength, felt the bond between her and Darius growing stronger with every step they took together. By the time they reached the royal wing, by the time Darius opened the door to chambers that were larger and more luxurious than anywhere she had ever lived, by the time he turned to her with an expression of such complex emotion she could not hope to untangle it, Isla knew that her life had irrevocably changed. There was no going back to invisibility, no returning to safety, no escaping the destiny the mirror had shown her. "These will be your rooms," Darius said. "My chambers are at the end of the hall. If you need anything, if you feel unsafe, if your wolf begins to emerge and you do not know how to control it, you come to me immediately. Do you understand?" Isla nodded mutely. Darius hesitated, and Isla could see the war playing out in his expression, could feel through the bond the desire to touch her, to pull her close, to claim the mate his wolf recognized as his own. But instead, he simply bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect that seemed almost painful in its restraint. "Welcome home, Princess Isla of the Silvermoon line," he said. "May you find here what was taken from you, and may you forgive me for what my family stole." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click that sounded unbearably final. Isla stood alone in the center of rooms that were meant for royalty, in a palace built on the blood of her family, bound by destiny to the man whose father had destroyed everything she should have been. And for the first time in her life, she let herself cry. Not quiet tears shed in darkness where no one could see her weakness, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place of grief, so profound it threatened to tear her apart. She cried for the family she never knew, for the mother who died to keep her safe, for the years spent hiding and afraid and alone, for the power she had been denied, for the throne that should have been hers, for the impossible situation the gods had placed her in, and for the bond she could feel even now, even through the walls that separated her chambers from Darius's, pulling at her heart like a hook embedded too deep to ever be removed. When the tears finally subsided, when she had cried herself empty, Isla walked to the window and looked out over the kingdom that was both her birthright and her prison. The moon was rising, full and bright, and as its light touched her skin, something inside her answered. Her wolf, rising, waking, ready. The transformation began without warning and without control. One moment Isla was standing on 2 legs, human and fragile and afraid. The next, she was falling forward onto 4 paws, her body, elongating and shifting and changing in ways that should have been agonizing, but felt instead like coming home. Her vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid and distinct. Her hearing expanded, picking up sounds from miles away. Her sense of smell exploded, bringing her information about the world in layers of complexity she had never imagined possible. And through it all, she could feel the power coursing through her, ancient and primal and utterly undeniable. She was Silver Moon royalty. She was a princess of the oldest bloodline. She was powerful and dangerous and no longer invisible. The wolf that stared back at her from the window's reflection was exactly what the mirror had shown her. White as moonlight, with eyes of silver that glowed in the darkness. Magnificent, deadly, free. For the first time in her life, Isla understood what she had been missing. This was what it meant to be complete. This was what it felt like to be whole. And as she threw back her head and howled, sound of grief and rage and triumph all woven together, she felt the bond flare between her and Darius like a star-going supernova. She felt him respond from his chambers down the hall, felt his wolf answer her call with one of his own, felt the connection between them solidify into something that could not be broken or denied or ignored. And Isla realized with absolute clarity that no matter what choice she made, no matter whether she accepted or rejected the bond, whether she forgave or sought vengeance, whether she took the throne or walked away, she and Darius were bound together in ways that transcended choice or desire or rational thought. The mirror had shown the truth. And the truth was this: they were mates. They were destined. They were inevitable. Now she just had to decide what she was going to do about it. The days that followed were a study in contradiction and conflict. Isla woke each morning in chambers meant for royalty, attended by servants who now bowed when they saw her, treated with a deference that felt both long overdue and utterly wrong. Darius had kept his word. She had time, space, freedom to move through the palace and explore the reality of what her life could be. But she did not have privacy. Everywhere she went, she was followed by guards assigned to protect her. Every conversation she had was monitored, assessed for danger. Every choice she made was scrutinized for evidence of rebellion or acceptance. And through it all, she could feel Darius. Watching her, not physically but through the bond, his presence a constant weight in the back of her mind. He did not summon her, did not demand her time or attention, but his patience felt like its own kind of pressure, a waiting that carried expectation and hope, and the promise that eventually, inevitably, they would have to confront what they were to each other. Isla spent her time learning. She met with historians who told her about the Silver Moon line, about the rulers who had come before her, about the power and wisdom and strength that had defined her bloodline for centuries. She trained with warriors who taught her to control her wolf, to shift at will rather than only under the moon's influence, to fight and hunt and move with the deadly grace of a true predator. She studied politics and strategy, learning the complex web of alliances and enmities that defined the kingdom. understanding for the first time just how precarious Darius's hold on power truly was. And the more she learned, the more complicated her feelings became. Because the truth was more nuanced than the simple narrative of good and evil she had carried for so long. Darius's father had indeed slaughtered the Silver Moon line, but he had done so in the final days of a civil war that had raged for a decade, a war that had torn the kingdom apart and left thousands dead. The Silver Moon rulers had been powerful, yes, but they had also been isolationist and unwilling to help the outer territories when disease and famine struck. They had hoarded their power and their magic, had treated the common wolves as lesser beings, had maintained traditions and hierarchies that kept most of the population in poverty, while the royal line lived in luxury. Darius's father had been a commoner, a warrior who had risen through the ranks on merit alone, who had unified the outer packs and led a rebellion that promised equality and strength for all. The slaughter of the Silver Moon line had been brutal and final, but it had also ended the war and brought peace to a fractured kingdom. It did not make it right. It did not erase the blood or the loss or the grief, but it made it comprehensible in ways Isla had not expected, and it made her question whether reclaiming the throne, even if she wanted it, would truly serve the kingdom, or simply restart the cycle of violence and revenge. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. On the 7th day of her new life, Darius finally sent for her. The summons came at sunset, delivered by a guard who bowed deeply and informed her that the Alpha King requested her presence in the throne room. Not commanded, requested. The distinction was deliberate, Isla knew. An acknowledgement that despite his power and position, he recognized her choice to come or refuse. But she went. Because avoiding him forever was impossible. And because some part of her, the part connected to him through the bond, needed to see him, to be near him, to feel the full strength of the connection that had only grown more powerful in the days they had been apart. The throne room was empty except for Darius. He stood before the massive stone throne that had been carved from a single piece of black granite, his back to the door, his posture radiating tension. Isla's footsteps echoed on the marble floor as she approached, and she saw his shoulders tighten at the sound, saw him brace himself before he turned to face her. When their eyes met, the bond flared so intensely that Isla had to fight to stay standing. The pull was almost unbearable, a physical force that demanded she close the distance between them, that she touch him, that she accept what her soul already knew to be true. But she stood her ground and waited for him to speak. "You have been learning about your family," Darius said. It was not a question. "I have had reports from the historians and the trainers. They say you are a fast study, that you have taken to your power as if you had always known it was there waiting for you. I am learning that history is more complicated than I believed," Isla said carefully. "That the story I told myself about heroes and villains, about good and evil, about rightful rule and stolen thrones was too simple, too clean." Darius nodded slowly. "And does that change how you feel about me? About what my father did? About the choice you must make?" Isla took a breath, considering her words. "It changes how I understand it. But it does not erase it. Your father killed my family. That is a fact that no amount of context can soften. But I am beginning to understand that holding on to that hatred, letting it define every choice I make, would make me exactly the kind of ruler the Silver Moon line was before they fell. Isolated. Focused on the past rather than the future. More concerned with vengeance than with the welfare of the people I would claim to serve." She met his eyes directly. "So no, it does not change how I feel about you, but it changes what I am willing to do with those feelings." Darius's expression shifted, hope and caution warring in his features. "What are you saying, Isla?" "I am saying that I cannot forgive what was done to my family. I may never be able to forgive it. But I am willing to consider the possibility that I do not need to forgive in order to move forward." She took a step closer, and then another, until she was standing directly before him, close enough to touch if she chose. I am saying that the bond between us is real and powerful, and it is not going to disappear no matter how much I wish it would. I am saying that my wolf recognizes you, and she is far less conflicted about what she wants than I am. And what do you want? Darius asked, his voice rough with barely suppressed emotion. Isla reached up and placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palm, feeling the way his entire body responded to her touch. I want to stop fighting against destiny and start fighting for a future that honors both our histories. I want to find a way to be true to my blood and my bond. I want to build something new, rather than trying to resurrect what is dead. She looked up at him, letting him see the vulnerability and the strength, the fear and the hope, the conflict and the clarity that all existed together inside her. And I want you, despite everything. Perhaps because of everything. I want you. The sound Darius made was somewhere between a growl and a sigh of relief. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. You are sure? Because once we do this, once we accept the bond fully, there is no going back. We will be tied together for the rest of our lives. Our wolves will be merged. Our souls will be joined. Are you ready for that, Isla? Are you ready to be mine as completely as I will be yours? I am ready, Isla whispered. I am terrified and uncertain, and I still have so many questions about what this means for the kingdom and for my family's legacy and for everything we will have to face together. But I am ready to stop running from the one thing in my life that feels absolutely right, even when it should feel absolutely wrong. Darius leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers, and the contact sent waves of sensation through the bond, pleasure and relief and rightness so profound it made Isla's knees weak. Then let us do this properly, he said. Let us complete the bond before the gods and the pack, and anyone who would question our union. Let us show the kingdom that Silver Moon and Nightshade, ancient enemies and rival bloodlines, have found a way to become one. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. Will you undergo the claiming ceremony with me, Isla? Will you stand before the pack as my mate and my equal? Will you help me break the curse that has plagued my line and accept the power that has been denied to yours? Yes, Isla said. The word came without hesitation, without doubt, because for all her questions and fears, this was the one truth she could not deny. Yes, I will be your mate. I will complete the bond. I will stand beside you and help you build a kingdom that honors both our bloodlines. Darius's smile was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. He swept her into his arms and kissed her, not gently or tentatively, but with all the pent-up longing and desire and desperate need that had been building between them since the moment he first looked into the mirror and saw what they were to each other. And Isla kissed him back, pouring into the contact all her own longing and fear and hope and acceptance. The bond between them blazed like wildfire, connecting them in ways that went beyond the physical, merging their souls in a joining that felt both utterly new and as ancient as time itself. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, both shaking with the intensity of what they had just shared, Darius rested his forehead against hers again and laughed, the sound full of joy and wonder and relief. I never thought I would have this, he said. I never thought I would find you. And now that I have, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me over your very justified desire for revenge. I am not choosing you over revenge, Isla corrected. I am choosing to build something better than revenge. There is a difference. Darius nodded. Then let us build it. Together. Let us create a kingdom where Silver Moon and Nightshade are not enemies but partners. Where power is shared rather than hoarded. Where the mistakes of the past inform the future rather than define it. The claiming ceremony was held 3 days later under the full moon in the ancient grove, where pack bonds had been forged for centuries. The entire court was in attendance, along with representatives from every pack in the kingdom, all of them summoned to witness what Darius had described in his proclamation as the most important event in the realm's history. Isla stood in the center of the sacred circle, wearing robes of silver and white, the traditional colors of the silver moon line. Her hair had been braided with moonstones, and around her neck hung the pendant that had belonged to her mother, the last piece of her heritage that the woman who raised her had managed to save. She looked every inch the princess she had been born to be, and the whispers that ran through. The crowd reflected shock and speculation, and in some quarters, anger. Many in the court had been loyal to Darius's father, had fought in the war that ended the Silver Moon line. Seeing that line resurrected, seeing a Silver Moon princess standing before them very much alive, was a blow to the narrative they had built their entire understanding of legitimacy upon. But Isla did not look at the crowd. She looked only at Darius, who stood across from her in the circle wearing the black and gold of the Nightshade line, his presence commanding and powerful and utterly focused on her. When the priestess began the ceremony, speaking the ancient words that would bind them together, Isla felt her wolf rise inside her, eager and ready and absolutely certain. This was right. This was meant to be. This was destiny, accepting them as willingly as they were accepting it. Do you, Isla of the Silver Moon line, last heir of the ancient bloodline, accept this bond? Do you willingly join your soul to Darius of the Nightshade line, Alpha King of the realm, knowing that this union will bind you together for all time? I do, Isla said, her voice clear and strong. I accept this bond. I claim this mate. I choose this destiny. The priestess turned to Darius. Do you, Darius of the Nightshade line, Alpha King of the realm, accept this bond? Do you willingly join your soul to Isla of the Silver Moon line, knowing that this union will change the nature of your rule and the future of the kingdom? I do, Darius said. I accept this bond. I claim this mate. I choose this destiny. The priestess raised her hands to the moon. Then, by the power of the ancients, by the grace of the gods, by the strength of the pack, I declare this bond complete. Let the claiming be witnessed. Let the union be celebrated. Let the curse be broken. Darius and Isla moved toward each other at the same moment, meeting in the center of the circle. When he took her hands in his, when their eyes locked, and their wolves recognized each other fully, and finally without reservation, the bond between them exploded into completion. Light poured from where they stood, silver and gold twisting together, illuminating the entire grove with a radiance that made everyone shield their eyes. Isla felt the change ripple through her, felt her power multiply and expand, felt the dormant magic of her bloodline wake fully for the first time in her life, and she felt Darius's transformation as well, felt his curse shatter like glass, felt his wolf emerge complete and whole, felt him become what he had always been meant to be. When the light faded, when they stood before the pack still holding hands but fundamentally changed, the whispers that had run through the crowd before became gasps of awe and wonder, because Darius had transformed fully for the first time in his life. His wolf, massive and black with eyes of molten gold, stood beside Isla's white wolf, and the two creatures looked at each other with recognition and devotion, and the absolute certainty of a bond that could not be broken by anything in heaven or earth. And when they threw back their heads and howled together, a sound of triumph and joy and completion, every wolf in the grove felt compelled to answer, their voices joining in a chorus that echoed through the kingdom and announced to all who heard it that the old enmities were ended, the old divisions were healed, and a new era had begun. Isla shifted back to her human form, and Darius did the same, and they stood before the pack, hand in hand, presenting themselves not as conqueror and conquered, not as enemies forced into alliance, but as true mates who had chosen each other despite impossible odds and devastating history. People of the realm, Darius said, his voice carrying to every corner of the grove. You have witnessed the completion of a bond that many thought impossible. You have seen Silver Moon and Nightshade join together. You have watched as old curses were broken and new power was born. He raised Isla's hand to his lips and kissed it, a gesture of devotion and respect that made her heart swell. I present to you Princess Isla, my mate and my equal. She will rule beside me not as a consort, but as a partner. Her voice will carry the same weight as mine. Her wisdom will inform our decisions. Her power will protect our people. Isla stepped forward. I know many of you remember the war that ended my family's line. I know the Silver Moon rulers who came before me, made mistakes, caused suffering, failed in their duty to protect all the people of the realm. She looked out at the faces watching her, some friendly, some neutral, some openly hostile. I cannot change what they did, but I can choose to be different. I can choose to build a future that learns from the past rather than repeating it. And I can choose to honor both my blood and my bond by working with King Darius to create a kingdom where power serves the people, rather than the people serving power. The silence that followed was heavy with significance. Then, one by one, the wolves in the grove began to bow their heads in acknowledgement. Not everyone. Not immediately. But enough that Isla knew they had a chance. Knew that the kingdom might accept this impossible union. Might give them the opportunity to prove that their bond was more than political theater or desperate strategy. There is one more thing, Darius said. He released Isla's hand and moved to the edge of the circle, where a cloth-covered object waited. When he pulled back the cloth, Isla saw the mirror of truth, the artifact that had started everything, reflecting the moonlight in its dark surface. This mirror showed us the truth of what we are, Darius said. It revealed secrets that should have destroyed us. But instead, those secrets saved us. Instead of showing us lies we wanted to believe, it showed us truths we needed to see. He turned to face the assembled wolves. From this day forward, the mirror of truth will be placed in the great hall where anyone can look into it, where anyone can see the reality behind appearances, the truth behind deception. Let it stand as a symbol of this new era, an age of honesty, of transparency, of facing difficult truths rather than hiding from them. Isla felt tears prick her eyes at the gesture. The mirror that had been her secret, her burden, her source of both hope and despair, would now serve the entire kingdom. It felt right. It felt like healing. That night, after the ceremony concluded and the celebrations began, after they had danced and feasted and accepted the congratulations and concerns of the court, Darius and Isla finally found themselves alone in his chambers. Their chambers now. The rooms that would be theirs together for the rest of their lives. Darius pulled Isla into his arms, and she went willingly, pressing herself against him and feeling the rightness of it, the completion of it, the absolute certainty that despite everything, despite all the reasons this should not work, they had found their way to each other. I love you, Darius said, the words simple but weighted with meaning. I know I should not. I know it is too soon, too complicated, too burdened with history. But I love you, Isla. I love your strength and your courage and your willingness to choose hope over hatred. I love that you challenged me and refused me and made me prove I was worthy. And I will spend the rest of my life loving you and earning the faith you have placed in me. Isla looked up at him, at this man who was both her mate and her former enemy, both her salvation and her greatest challenge. I love you too, she said, and I am still terrified of what that means. I am still angry about the past. I am still uncertain about the future. But I love you, and I choose to believe that love is stronger than history, that our bond is more powerful than our bloodlines, that together we can build something beautiful from the ashes of what was burned. Darius kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, claiming her in ways that went beyond the ceremonial bond they had just completed. And Isla kissed him back, accepting him and choosing him, and committing to the impossible, beautiful, terrifying future they would build together. Later, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the windows, Isla thought about the mirror and the truth it had shown her. The mirror had revealed that she was powerful, that she was royal, that she was destined for more than invisibility and insignificance. But the deepest truth it had shown her was this: that sometimes destiny is not about what is taken from us, but about what we choose to build from what remains. That sometimes the greatest power is not the ability to destroy our enemies, but the courage to love them. That sometimes the most revolutionary act is not revenge, but forgiveness. Not reclaiming what was lost, but creating something new. She had been the invisible Omega who discovered she was a hidden princess. She had been the woman who thought she had no power, who learned she held the strength of an ancient bloodline. She had been the enemy who became the mate of the man whose father destroyed her family. And now, she was something new entirely. Not just Silvermoon or Nightshade, not just victim or victor, not just bound by the past or free to shape the future. She was both and neither, and something more. She was Isla, mate of the Alpha King, heir to 2 bloodlines, and architect of a new kingdom built on truth rather than lies, on unity rather than division, on the radical belief that love could heal even the deepest wounds and bridge even the widest chasms. The mirror had shown her the truth, and the truth had set her free. In the months that followed the bonding ceremony, Isla and Darius worked together to transform the kingdom. They established councils that included representatives from all the packs, not just the nobility. They opened the royal archives to scholars who could study the real history of the realm, not the sanitized version that served political purposes. They used the mirror of truth to root out corruption and deception in the court, though they did so carefully, understanding that truth wielded as a weapon could be as destructive as any lie. And slowly, gradually, the kingdom began to heal. The old divisions between those who had supported the Silvermoon line and those who had fought for Nightshade dominance began to fade. The common wolves saw that their new queen understood their struggles, that she had lived in invisibility and poverty, that she knew what it meant to be powerless. And the nobility saw that she was strong enough to command respect, wise enough to make difficult decisions, and bound to the Alpha King in ways that made their rule unshakable. There were challenges, of course. There were those who could not forgive the past, who saw Isla as either a traitor to her bloodline for bonding with her family's killer, or as a threat to the stability Darius had brought to the realm. There were assassination attempts, and political maneuvers, and midnight meetings where enemies plotted their downfall. But Isla and Darius faced each challenge together, their bond making them stronger than they could have been apart, their combined power and wisdom creating solutions that neither could have found alone. And through it all, the mirror stood in the great hall, silent, witness to the truth of what they had built. Sometimes Isla would stand before it in the quiet hours of the morning and look at her reflection. The woman who looked back at her was no longer the invisible Omega who had hidden in the vaults. She was a queen in her own right, powerful and confident and unafraid. But she was also still Isla, still the woman who had chosen love over hatred, destiny over revenge, the future over the past. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? 1 year to the day after the bonding ceremony, Isla stood on the balcony of the palace looking out over the kingdom as the sun rose. Behind her, she could feel Darius approaching, could sense him through the bond that connected them as surely as breath connected to lungs. He wrapped his arms around her from behind and pulled her back against his chest. And she leaned into his strength with a contentment she had never imagined possible. "What are you thinking about?" Darius asked, his breath warm against her ear. Isla smiled. I am thinking about mirrors and truth and the strange paths destiny takes us down. I am thinking about how I came to this palace as a servant who believed she was nothing and discovered I was everything. I am thinking about how the man I should have hated became the man I cannot live without. I am thinking about how the gods have strange senses of humor and even stranger senses of justice. Darius turned her in his arms so he could see her face. And are you happy with where destiny has brought you? Isla looked up at him, at her mate and her partner and her love. I am happy, she said simply. I am still healing from the past. I still have moments where the grief and the anger rise up and threaten to overwhelm me. But I am happy. And I am grateful. And I am exactly where I am meant to be. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the small but unmistakable presence of the life growing there, the child who would carry both Silvermoon and Nightshade blood, who would be the living symbol of the new era they had created. We are exactly where we are meant to be. Darius's eyes widened as he understood what she was telling him. You are certain? Isla nodded, tears of joy gathering in her eyes. The healers confirmed it yesterday. We are going to have a child, Darius. An heir who will never have to choose between bloodlines, who will inherit the strength of both our families, who will rule a kingdom that values truth and unity and love. Darius pulled her close and held her, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. I never thought I would have this. A mate, a child, a family, a future that holds hope instead of just duty and burden. You gave me all of that, Isla. You took the broken parts of me and made them whole. You turned a curse into a blessing. You transformed my kingdom and my heart. Isla held him just as tightly. We did that. Together. We chose each other when we had every reason not to. We built something beautiful from pain and loss and impossible circumstances. And we will continue to build it, day by day, choice by choice, until the day we pass this kingdom to our children and the children who come after them. They stood together on the balcony as the sun rose fully, bathing the kingdom in golden light. And if anyone had looked up at that moment and seen them there, they would have witnessed a truth that needed no mirror to reveal it. The truth that love, real love, the kind that sees clearly and chooses anyway, the kind that acknowledges pain and builds beauty from it, the kind that refuses to let history define destiny, is the most powerful magic in the world. Stronger than bloodlines, stronger than curses, stronger than hatred or revenge or even death itself. The Alpha King had found the mirror the woman hid and had seen the truth reflected back at him. And that truth had not destroyed him as he feared. Instead, it had saved him. It had shown him that the woman he had overlooked was the one he needed most. That the bond he thought impossible was the one thing that could make him complete. That the future he had resigned himself to never having was waiting for him in the eyes of a woman who had every reason to hate him and chose instead to love. The mirror had shown them the truth, and the truth had set them both free. Free to love. Free to build. Free to become more together than they ever could have been apart. And that, in the end, was the greatest magic of all.